Bryce Baker meets Julie Baker when his family moves into the house next door before second grade. From the moment she sees him, Julie is convinced they are meant to be together. She constantly follows him, talks to him, and even hugs him in front of their classmates, believing Bryce is simply too shy to admit he likes her back. Bryce, however, feels embarrassed by her attention. His classmates tease him about having a girlfriend, and although he wants her to leave him alone, he is too polite to tell her directly. Instead, he spends years trying to avoid her whenever he can. By sixth grade, Bryce comes up with a plan to finally make Julie lose interest in him. He starts dating the popular girl Sherry, hoping Julie will give up on him. The plan appears to work until Bryce's best friend Garrett reveals that Bryce was only pretending to like Sherry. Feeling humiliated and used, Sherry slaps Bryce and breaks up with him. When Julie hears what happened, she returns to following Bryce as before, even sitting behind him in class and secretly enjoying the sweet watermelon scent of his hair. Bryce is horrified, while Julie believed Sherry had only tried to steal Bryce away and is relieved when the relationship ends. At the same time, Bryce's grandfather becomes curious about Julie after seeing her featured in the local newspaper. She earns recognition for bravely protesting the removal of a magnificent sycamore tree that she loves dearly. Bryce's grandfather admires her courage and calls her someone with an iron backbone, encouraging Bryce to invite her someday. Bryce cannot understand why anyone would admire the girl he has spent years trying to avoid. For Julie, the sycamore tree is far more than a tree. After her father teaches her to appreciate the beauty of nature, she discovers that the view from its highest branches reveals the entire town, rolling fields and breathtaking sunrises. Climbing the tree each morning becomes her favorite part of the day. When workers arrive to cut it down, Julie desperately refuses to come down, hoping someone, including Bryce, will stand beside her. Despite her pleas, no one helps. Eventually, firefighters arrive, and after her father gently convinces her to let go, the beloved tree is cut down. The loss leaves Julie heartbroken and unusually quiet, while Bryce briefly considers comforting her but decides against it. Wanting to ease her sadness, Julie's father paints a beautiful picture of the sycamore tree and gives it to her as a gift. She treasures the painting, hanging it in her bedroom where it is the first thing she sees every morning and the last thing she sees every night. As time passes, Julie begins to mature and question whether her feelings for Bryce are really as strong as she once believed. Around the same time, she develops a fascination with raising chickens and studying eggs, becoming captivated by the miracle of life. Her dedication leads her to create an impressive science project about egg hatching, which wins first place at the science fair. Bryce is disappointed when Julie wins first prize at the school science fair instead of him, and his frustration grows when her chickens begin laying more eggs than her family can use. Wanting to share her good fortune, Julie starts giving fresh eggs to Bryce's family as a thoughtful gift. While Bryce's mother and grandfather Chet appreciate her kindness, Bryce and his father refuse to trust the eggs because of Julie's family's poorly maintained home. Bryce's father tells him to return them, but instead of hurting Julie's feelings, Bryce secretly throws the eggs into the trash every time she delivers them. After several weeks, Julie catches him dumping the eggs she worked so hard to produce. Feeling deeply betrayed, she stops talking to Bryce, avoids him at school, and refuses to sit with him. Bryce soon realizes that her silence hurts far more than her constant attention ever did, because it forces him to confront how badly he treated her. As Bryce struggles with guilt, he notices his grandfather spending more and more time with Julie, helping her in the yard and enjoying long conversations with her. Feeling jealous, Bryce wonders why his grandfather seems closer to Julie than to him. Chet eventually learns about the discarded eggs and encourages Bryce to apologize sincerely. Taking his advice, Bryce approaches Julie, admits he was wrong, compliments the effort she has put into improving her yard, and apologizes for throwing away her gifts. Julie accepts his apology, and during their conversation, she mentions that Chet told her she reminds him of his late wife. Bryce feels relieved, believing he has finally begun repairing the damage he caused. That evening, tension erupts in Bryce's home when his father criticizes Chet for spending so much time with Julie instead of his own grandson. He also insults Julie's family, calling them strange and irresponsible. Chet fiercely defends them, explaining that the family's struggles stem from caring for Julie's Uncle Daniel, who suffered a brain injury at birth after the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. He then reveals that Bryce experienced the same complication during birth, but was fortunate enough to avoid permanent damage. Later, Chet takes Bryce for a walk and tells him that Julie is an extraordinary girl whose appreciation for beauty, especially her love for the sycamore tree and nature, shows wisdom far beyond her age. Bryce can't stop thinking about her words and begins seeing Julie in a completely different light, realizing he is slowly falling for her. Meanwhile, Julie decides to improve her family's neglected yard after learning Bryce once mocked it. Her mother is hurt by the criticism and argues with Julie's father, wishing he could spend more time caring for their own home instead of constantly helping his disabled brother. Although the argument upsets everyone, the couple apologizes to Julie afterward. Determined to make a difference herself, Julie starts fixing the yard alone until Chet arrives to help. As they work together, they bond over memories of the sycamore tree, nature, and life, and Julie gradually realizes that her childhood crush on Bryce is beginning to fade. Bryce, however, finds himself thinking about Julie constantly. His growing feelings become obvious enough that his mother decides to invite Julie's family over for dinner, despite objections from Bryce and his father. At school, Bryce's best friend Garrett notices Bryce's sudden interest in Julie and insists it is only guilt over the eggs and the comments about her yard. Garrett then cruelly mocks Julie and her disabled Uncle Daniel. Although Bryce initially forces a laugh, he quickly walks away, disturbed by Garrett's insults. On the way home, Bryce admits to himself that his feelings have changed. He genuinely likes Julie now and cannot stand hearing anyone disrespect her. Unfortunately, Julie overhears only part of that conversation. After a friend tells her Bryce has been staring at her and might have a crush on her, she secretly listens as Bryce and Garrett talk in the library. She hears Garrett ridicule her uncle and sees Bryce laugh before walking away, never realizing that Bryce leaves because he is uncomfortable with Garrett's cruelty. Believing Bryce shares Garrett's opinions, Julie is heartbroken and loses all remaining feelings for him. Later that day, she accompanies her father to celebrate Uncle Daniel's birthday. Although Daniel is frightened at first, he soon recognizes Julie as his niece, and the family shares a warm, loving celebration that reminds Julie how important compassion and family truly are. Bryce and Julie accompany Uncle Daniel to an ice cream shop to celebrate his birthday after visiting him at his apartment. During the outing, Daniel accidentally drops his ice cream and becomes overwhelmed, causing everyone in the shop to stare. Instead of panicking, Julie calmly buys him another cone, and he immediately relaxes, smiling as though nothing had happened. Witnessing the incident firsthand gives Julie a completely new perspective on her father's life. She finally understands how much patience, love, and responsibility it takes to care for Daniel every single day. For the first time, she realizes why her father has never been able to devote enough time to fixing their house or maintaining the yard. Rather than feeling embarrassed by her family, Julie grows even more appreciative of the sacrifices her parents make, especially her father's quiet devotion to his brother. When they return home, Julie's mother excitedly announces that Bryce's mother has invited the entire Baker family over for dinner. Neither Julie nor her father is eager to accept the invitation because they have experienced years of judgment and disrespect from Bryce's family. Bryce's father constantly criticized their untidy yard, looked down on their financial situation, and treated them as if they were inferior. Julie herself has recently been hurt by Bryce after discovering that he secretly threw away every carton of fresh eggs she lovingly delivered to his family. Despite their reservations, Julie and her father agree to attend because they can see how genuinely excited her mother is. While getting ready, Julie looks at the painting of the sycamore tree her father created after her favorite tree was cut down. The painting reminds her of everything she lost and makes her realize something important. Whenever she truly needed Bryce, he was never there. He never stood beside her when the tree was being cut down, never defended her when others mocked her, and never appreciated the things she cared about. She almost tells her mother she doesn't want to go, but she swallows her feelings because she doesn't want to ruin the evening for the rest of her family. Across the street, Bryce is having a completely different experience. Ever since Chet helped him understand Julie's character, Bryce has been unable to stop thinking about her. He carefully gets ready for dinner, hoping he can finally explain himself and perhaps repair the damage between them. The moment the Bakers arrive, Bryce eagerly greets Julie and tells her she looks beautiful. Instead of smiling, Julie immediately confronts him about the conversation she overheard in the school library. She tells him she heard Garrett mocking her Uncle Daniel while Bryce laughed, and because of that, she never wants him to speak to her again. Bryce is left stunned before he can even explain what actually happened. As Julie walks away to join the adults, Bryce stands alone, embarrassed and confused, realizing that the misunderstanding has completely destroyed any progress he had made. Determined not to give up, Bryce approaches Julie again later in the evening. He sincerely apologizes, admitting that Garrett's comments about Daniel were cruel and inexcusable. He also confesses that even though he disagreed with Garrett, he lacked the courage to defend Julie and her family. Julie listens quietly, but tells Bryce that remaining silent was just as bad as joining in. In her eyes, he had chosen his friendship with Garrett over doing the right thing. She calls him a coward before returning to the dinner table.
Throughout the meal, she deliberately avoids making eye contact with Bryce, answers none of his attempts to speak, and treats him like a complete stranger. Bryce feels the weight of every second of her silence, realizing how deeply he has hurt the person who now means the most to him. Meanwhile, the adults enjoy what appears to be a pleasant dinner, unaware of the emotional battle taking place between Bryce and Julie. The conversation eventually turns to the old sycamore tree. Bryce's father casually remarks that the neighborhood is better off now that the tree has been removed, dismissing it as nothing more than an inconvenience. Julie's father politely disagrees, explaining that for many people, the tree represented the beauty of the neighborhood, and that some things cannot be measured only by money or convenience. Bryce wants desperately to support Julie's father because he finally understands why the tree meant so much to Julie. However, when he looks at his own father, fear keeps him silent. Once again, Bryce fails to stand up for what he believes, reinforcing the very weakness Julie criticized. The conversation shifts when Bryce's father asks Julie's twin brothers, Mark and Matt, about their plans after graduating high school. They enthusiastically explain that they hope to pursue music professionally. Bryce's mother casually reveals that Bryce's father was once an excellent saxophone player himself. Excited, the twins invite him to play music with them someday. Rather than appreciating the invitation, Bryce's father quickly rejects it, claiming those days are behind him. Bryce notices something unusual in his father's expression, a forced smile hiding disappointment and bitterness. Julie also quietly observes him and realizes that beneath his polished appearance lies someone filled with resentment and unhappiness. For the first time, both Bryce and Julie begin seeing Bryce's father as a deeply flawed man whose negativity influences the entire family. As dinner ends, Julie briefly apologizes for speaking harshly to Bryce when they first met that evening. Although her apology is polite, Bryce can tell it comes only from good manners rather than forgiveness. The emotional distance between them remains unchanged. After Julie's family leaves, another heated argument erupts inside Bryce's home. Bryce's father once again lashes out at everyone around him, and in a burst of anger, he even slaps Bryce's younger sister. Watching this shocking moment forces Bryce to question everything he believed about his father. Alone in bed later that night, he reflects on the evening and wonders why his father despises Julie's family so intensely. He remembers how his father criticized their home, their yard, Julie's father's paintings, and even the sycamore tree. Bryce slowly realizes that his father's hostility seems to come not from logic, but from jealousy and insecurity. Sadly, Bryce also convinces himself that none of this matters anymore, because Julie is no longer part of his life. On the other side of the neighborhood, Julie sleeps peacefully for the first time in years. She no longer spends her nights dreaming about Bryce, and instead feels grateful for the warmth, love, and support of her own imperfect but caring family. Several weeks later, the school hosts its annual basket boy auction, a charity event where girls bid money to have lunch with one of the boys. Bryce is terrified of standing on stage, but his greatest concern is whether Julie still cares enough to bid for him. Earlier that morning, Julie intentionally leaves her money at home because she doesn't want to be tempted into choosing Bryce. On her way to school, however, a neighbor unexpectedly pays her for the eggs she had been delivering, leaving her with enough cash to participate after all. Before the auction begins, she runs into Sherry, who announces her plan to bid on Bryce. Julie confidently tells Sherry to go ahead because she insists she no longer has feelings for him. Even so, as Bryce's turn approaches, she finds herself growing unexpectedly nervous. When Eddie is called onto the stage, nobody offers a bid. Feeling sorry for him, Julie raises her hand and wins the chance to have lunch with him simply to spare him the embarrassment of being ignored. Moments later, Sherry successfully wins Bryce. While Julie sits with Eddie and enjoys his company, she repeatedly glances toward Bryce's table without realizing it. Bryce, meanwhile, cannot concentrate on Sherry at all. Every laugh Julie shares with Eddie fills him with regret over everything he has lost. Overcome by emotion, Bryce suddenly leaves Sherry, walks across the cafeteria, gently pulls Julie to her feet, and impulsively leans in to kiss her. The unexpected gesture shocks everyone. Julie immediately pushes him away and rushes out of the cafeteria, while the students burst into laughter at Bryce's humiliation. Garrett chases Bryce outside and angrily demands to know why he abandoned the prettiest girl in school for someone as weird as Julie. This time, Bryce refuses to tolerate another insult. He shoves Garrett away and firmly tells him he could never understand what Julie truly means to him. It is the first time Bryce openly defends her without hesitation. After school, Bryce walks straight to Julie's house carrying the basket from the auction. He knocks repeatedly, but no one answers. Later, he calls her home, only for Julie's mother to explain that Julie refuses to speak with him. Bryce spends the next 2 days trying everything he can think of, but Julie ignores every call and every visit. Eventually, the attempts stop, leading Julie to believe she has finally succeeded in pushing Bryce out of her life forever. One morning, Julie notices Bryce digging a large hole in her front yard. Furious, she rushes outside, intending to tell him to leave immediately. Before she can say anything, her father calmly explained that he personally invited Bryce over and gave him permission to work in the garden. Confused, Julie watches silently as Bryce disappears behind a truck before returning with a young sycamore tree in his arms. Carefully and respectfully, he lowers the tree into the hole and begins covering its roots with fresh soil. The gesture instantly reminds Julie of the magnificent sycamore tree she lost years earlier, the tree Bryce once failed to appreciate but now understands completely. Overwhelmed with emotion, Julie walks toward him. Looking into Bryce's eyes, she remembers the little boy she fell in love with on the day he moved into the neighborhood. Bryce remembers that same day as well, but now he understands why Julie always seems so extraordinary. Kneeling beside each other, they gently finish planting the young sycamore together. Bryce softly reaches for Julie's hand, and this time she doesn't pull away. Instead, she smiles warmly, accepting both his apology and the person he has become. The newly planted tree symbolizes not only the return of something Julie once lost, but also the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship. Just as the sycamore will slowly grow stronger over the years, Bryce and Julie's friendship, and perhaps their first true love, finally takes root on a foundation of honesty, empathy, and mutual respect.